So let me introduce our next guest. Next guest is going to be joining us from the UK. He is a historian, anthropologist, a jack of all trades. I don't know how else to describe him. Incredibly energetic. You have to spend some time on his YouTube postings. It's called Lindybeige. There's a lot of viewing material, which is just fascinating and will also bring some smiles and laughter as well. So we're gonna pass it over to Nicholas to talk to us today, actually, about an interesting topic around British coins.
Hello, thank you very much. Very, very flattering introduction as usual. Right, so when the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band said, "You've heard of Alibaba, 40 thieves had he, out forth we all want, lots of LSD." It was the 1970s, and a lot of people thought that he was talking about drugs, but LSD is actually libra, solidus, and denarii, which is pounds, shillings, and pence. Those were the Roman coins, and the British adopted many years ago, centuries and centuries ago, those standard abbreviations and kept with them until decimalisation in 1971. And even today, the pound sign, just like the dollar sign, is an S with 2 lines through it, and the yen is a Y with 2 lines through it, and the euro is an E with 2 lines through it. Well, the pound sign, that's an L with 2 lines through it for libra, for pound. And of course, pound is also a weight. And a libra was, a long time ago, it's changed since, but a long time ago, it was defined as the weight of 240 denarii, the coins, the denarii. And so it was 240 pence to a pound, literally pound of weight. But also that was, of course, a value of coinage. And so we have the coinage, the pound. So that's why they're both called the pound. And it's one of the reasons that we have 240 of them. And 240 pence to the pound was by no means unique to the British. It was a very common number, which I'll get back to later, used in many other countries. The British were far from weird. They just kept using it for longer than most. Right, so going back, behind me you see a couple of Celtic coins. They don't look very good. They are tiny, by the way. These early coins are minuscule. And there's one of the Deuterogis on this side of me, and on the other side that's one from the Iceni, a tribe famous by having for a very short while, a queen called Boudica. She didn't last very long, and it's actually a copy of the head of Alexander the Great. There's his hair and his eyes sort of around here-ish. You've got nose, mouth. It's not a very good copy of a Macedonian coin. Anyway, the Celts in Britain at first made do with imported coins, and then by about 100 BC they were making their own, quickly adopted it, and by 70 BC they had many and varied coins. And they kept making them until Nero said, no, we'll have enough of this. To be properly conquered, you've got to start using our coins. So they started using Roman coins, and there you go. Roman coin there. Don't have much. I've only got a few minutes to talk about British coins. I'm not going to spend very long on Roman coins, but you've seen one Roman coin, you've seen them all really, largely made out of bronze. And the denier. So the denier became the penny, but so the abbreviation was until 1971 still D for pence. But the term penny is a very old English one, introduced by the Saxons, and they produced pennies for 600 years. That was it. That was the coin. It was a penny, and they got really good at it. And in fact, they brought it to such a high standard that it got copied very widely in Europe and elsewhere. And the early Saxon coins were called, on this side, the stycka or stikka, but later on we get that there's a penny. There's a Saxon penny. There's a guy with a very fancy hairdo. And as I say, they were used for a very long time, but at first there were no half pennies and halfpennies. What you did, you literally got a shear and you cut it. So a half penny was literally a penny that had been cut into half. And then you cut it in half again, you have a farthing. And you may have heard of a term which actually comes from much later, when coinage was, Spanish gold was being stolen. You may have heard of pieces of 8. And a piece of 8 was literally a Spanish coin that had been cut into 8 bits. So each bit was sort of segment shaped. So that's what a piece of 8 was. Anyway, the Normans didn't change things very much, but in the early Norman kings were getting a bit annoyed that the coinage was being what we call debased. To be debased is for the metal, which is meant to be pure silver, was being mixed with other cheaper metals. And Henry I got just so annoyed that he summoned all the makers of money around the kingdom. And at one point, it was up to as many as 90 mints. And he summoned them to the famous Assizes of the Monniers. This was in 1124 to Westminster. And he put them on trial, and those who were found guilty of debasing the coinage had bits chopped off them. Hands and genitals, according to what we're told. So he was really unhappy. But I dare say that that rapidly improved the purity of the silver in English coinage. Right now, you may have heard of the groat, and some people think that there's another money system. No, the groat was just the name of a coin, and it was worth 4 pence. And do I have a groat? I think I do have a groat. If I scroll down on my screen, I should have a groat. Is that the groat? Hang on. I think that one at the bottom is a groat. Okay. Sorry. And these were often made on dies. Oh, that picture hasn't translated well at all. But essentially, you've got a hammer bit and an anvil bit, and they've both got one half of the coin's design on. And so you just whack the two together, and it gives you an impression on both sides, but doesn't do anything for the edge. So the early coins were not milled around the edge, which meant that one problem was that people used to file the edge down because you got then silver dust or gold dust, which you could then remelt, and that was valuable in itself. And so a problem with early coins was that people filing the edges off. And that's one of the reasons that early coins look so amazingly worn around the edges. It's because people were deliberately wearing them down. Anyway, the kings thought, enough of all this having loads of mint everywhere. This is no good. We'll have one mint, damn it. We'll have it in the Tower of London, where we can keep a good close eye on it. And they produced there the most advanced penny for about 200 years that was very widely not just accepted, but copied as well in Europe, because people trusted it. And it was in 1279 that Edward I introduced the round coins. Nope, that's not it. It scrolls past it, or scrolls straight past it the other way. Never mind. It's a small round coin, essentially, which is the farthing, which is the quarter penny, and the halfpenny, or halfpenny, which is the half coin. These were actually proper coins now. They were actually round coins. And then Edward III introduced the gold noble. Oh, yes. Nope, that's not it. There we go. There's a pretty coin. And that was worth 80 pence, which at this point was half a mark. Okay, now the mark is often confusing because people think, is a mark a coin? No, a mark wasn't a coin. It was never a coin, and it wasn't another system of coinage either. It was simply used in accounting. It was, at first, 100 pence, and then later got changed to 160 pence, which is exactly 2/3 of a pound, which is 240 pence. Okay? Keeping up? Good. So there never was a coin called the mark, but it was used in accounting, partly because it was a convenient way of weighing coins, which was still used right up until decimalization for reasons which I'll explain in a bit. The first coins where the accurate portrait of the king comes along is Henry VIII, and we see him in coins. We actually see him age from a young king right through to the old bloated mastodon that he later became. And he also got the name Old Copper-Nose because, again, under his watch, the coins got debased, and people were making essentially a copper coin and then putting an incredibly thin gold coin around that. But once it got worn a bit, because he went from the normal profile to face-on portrait, it would wear down on the end of his nose, and you would see first the end of his nose go copper-coloured. And so one of his nicknames was Old Copper-Nose, though I dare say not many people called him that to his face. 1551, Edward VI, we get the first coins with dates on. And we also start, and in Elizabeth's time, we get the first milled coins. I believe, please let me show you the Elizabeth's milled coin. That's not it. That's it. There you go, Elizabeth I. So that's a proper milled coin. So you see it's an accurate circle. and it's got those fine dots that go up quite near the edge on the front, and the edges, though you can't see them here, have got designs on as well. So if you filed a bit off the edge of that, everyone will be able to tell. Unfortunately, it took them ages with the technology of the time to make them, and so that process got abandoned for a bit again. I think I've talked for too long already about the coinage, because I want to get on to the pre-decimal stuff. I'll just say that the guinea was another really weird thing. Now, the guinea was a coin, and it was 20 shillings. And 20 shillings is 20 times 12. That's 240. Brilliant. So it was £1, but it was called guinea because it was made out of pure gold from Guinea, from the Gold Coast of West Africa. And they coined them, and then the value of gold went up. So it was worth more than £1, and eventually it got worth 21 shillings, so slightly more than £1, and that was really, really annoying. So they got rid of that, but weirdly, the value of the guinea carried on. So even in the early 20th century, people were paying each other in guineas, even though no coin or note of 1 guinea existed at the time. It was a posh thing. So if you paid your lawyer, your solicitor, your architect, your very posh tailor, someone like that, you would pay them in guineas. They would bill you in guineas. It was a way of showing you the world that you were posh, that you billed in guineas. Also horse racing, not all gambling, not common folk gambling, but the posh gambling like horse racing, debts were settled in guineas because it was purely a class thing by that time. Right, I want to go forward to these coins, and there we go. So these are the pre-decimal coins as used throughout the late Victorian period and right through to 1971. You see, there's that coin. There's got Churchill on it. So these coins, the bronze coins, the penny, and the farthing, and the halfpenny there, they were all deliberately designed to be each to weigh exactly appropriate to their value. So you could get a bag of mixed coins of all sorts of denominations, because each one was twice the weight and twice the value. It didn't matter how you mixed them. You weighed that bag in a bank, and the banker would know straight away exactly what that was worth. So it was a very quick, convenient way of counting coins that we've lost today. Right, now, when I tell people that the old British pound had 240 pence, the usual response I get is a laugh, but it's a derisive laugh. How ridiculous. But twice in my life, someone who didn't know this has reacted in quite a different way. They've gone, ooh. And don't think it was insignificant that both these people were mathematicians, because 240 is what's known as a highly composite number. A highly composite number is one which has more subdivisions than any number smaller than it. So 1 is, obviously, so is 2, but 4 is the next one because it divides by 2. But as you go up the rate, it goes 1, 2, 4, 6, then jumps to 12, then 24, 36, 48, 60, jumps a really big one to 120, then it goes 180, then 240, and as you go up the scale, the distance between these numbers becomes really big. So by the time you've got to the 30th highly composite number, it's tens of thousands of numbers between them. 240, you see, is a really, really good number. It doesn't just divide by a lot of things, but it divides by a lot of things that are themselves highly composite numbers that divide by a lot of things. So I've drawn up this. This is a list of all the submultiples of 100. So you see 100 divides by 50. And 50 divides by 25, which divides by 5, and that's it. 5 is a prime number, that's it. It also divides by 10, which divides by 5 and 2. Whoopity-doo. And 25, that may seem like a convenient number, but it only divides by 5, and that's a prime number, so that's all you get. So that is the total haul of all the submultiples of 100, and it includes within it all the convenient numbers that you have if you use a decimal coinage, and so it's perhaps no surprise that countries around the world, they've all got a 2-pence coin, a 5-pence coin, a 10-pence coin, a 50, and they've either got a 20 or a 25. In America, you've got a quarter, haven't you? A 25-cent piece. In Britain, we went for 20. 25 cents only divides by 5. It's not actually that great. We went for the 20, which, as you see, has got many more subdivisions. So it's actually a more useful size of coin. Anyway, if you use 240, you get this lot. That's all the sub-multiples of 240. So as you can see, it's colossally more than you get for 100. And what's more, the sub-multiples are really useful numbers like 60 and 48, which have loads of really good sub-multiples. And when you're using in commerce, you sell things in multiples. You sell things in batches. Nobody sells a packet of 7, do they? You buy a packet of 12 eggs or 6 eggs, or things are sold in 10s and 20s and numbers like that, which are all on this chart. So you can then immediately find out a convenient number, which is the value of one of the things from that packet. So if you use 240, most transactions involve convenient numbers. For a start, it divides by the phenomenally important number 3. All the decimal coinage in the world doesn't divide by 3, which is the third most important number. Now, you would never have a coinage, would you, that didn't divide by 2. Nobody has 99 pence to the dollar or anything because it doesn't divide by 2. You can't even halve it. People will say, that's ridiculous. Yeah, but you can't even divide it by 3. Surely you're going to pick a number that divides by 3, like 240. So, before the dark times, coinage was enormously, and people were very, very familiar with all these things. Now, if you're familiar with the dollar, which I'm sure you are, you don't have to do a sum in your head, do you? That 50. What's a 50-cent piece called? It's
$1, half dollar.
No, what's a 50-cent called?
The half dollar.
Oh, a half dollar. Is that all it's called? I thought that. Yeah. Well, all right, a quarter. A quarter is 25 cents, right? You don't have to do a sum in your head. You go, oh, that's 4 times 25. Oh, that's exactly $1. You just know, don't you? You just know because you've used these coins all your life. Yeah, 4 quarters is $1. Well, people knew how many shillings, how many sixpences went into a shilling. People knew the relationship between all these coins, and so actually, I'm here to act as an advocate for the pre-decimalization. Yes, it was a system that flipping well worked, and that's why it survived over 2 millennia of use. And I'll shut up now, I think.
Amazing. That is truly amazing. Thank you. Wow, Nicholas. So I particularly, when we lost the concept of just weighing a bag of coins and you knew exactly the value, that was an interesting point. And the whole complex mathematics around this, I had not understood or appreciated that. That's quite fascinating.
Yeah, 100 is only a round number because it's 10 times 10. And in base 10, that's quite good, but 10 divides by 5 and 2, and they're both primes. It's rubbish.
Yes.
Well, I always figured it had to do with, people could count 10 on their hands.
Yeah, but is that the great excuse? A lot of mathematicians use hexadecimal, which of course
true.
You can halve and halve and halve again, and still you have whole numbers.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, we have a few questions, and we should open it up also. So there's a couple questions in the chat window. The first one is just a comment that the term chiseler also came from cutting down the edges of coinage.
Oh, yes. Could well have been. There was also a process sometimes called clipping, where I think they went a bit beyond filing and they're actually taking chunks off with a pair of shears.
So I guess there was a lot of extra wealth created just from sanding down the edges when there weren't rims around them.
And I think that was how the king viewed it.
Right. There's another question here is, how were coins from different monetary systems exchanged back then? This must have been quite critical for trade.
Well, if you had coinage that was properly made out of pure silver, and people had things called touchstones, which they would rub a coin of known purity on, and then they would rub the coin you're trying to pass off them, and they would compare the color on the touchstone. It's actually surprisingly accurate. I've made a video about this. It's a surprisingly accurate way of judging the purity of silver. If they were accepted that your coins were made of that silver, then again, simple weight of silver was I think the commonest way of doing that.
So the purity of the metal.
I talked about how the British several times, and actually several times more, because when the Industrial Revolution got going is when, again, British coinage was the best in the world and was widely copied and accepted because it was so good. So the British were right at the cutting edge and the forefront several times, but also several times in between horrible debasing, such as in Henry II's time and again in Henry VIII's. It was a constant problem that you take your eye off the ball for a second and people will start using cheaper metals.
Another question, how about the term percent? Where did that originate?
Well, a cent as in is just Latin for 100, so it's just part of 100.
Percent. Okay. Yeah, totally makes sense now that you think about it. Yeah. Hey, do we have any other questions that folks want to just ask? You can use the chat window or just unmute yourself.
Yeah, I was going to ask Nicholas about the. I mean, obviously, I'm British. I grew up with pennies, and you mentioned pennies and pounds and farthings, and I had all of those. What about the shilling? Where did the shilling come from as 12 pence or 12 pennies?
Well,
was it related to the Austrian shilling?
The Austrians carried on using the word shilling, just as we today are still using the word pound, even though a pound sort of isn't a pound anymore. But we still call our currency the pound. And the term the shilling, actually I've got a note for it somewhere. The old shilling was originally called, come on, where is it? Blast it. Testoon, there we go. It was called the testoon. But the English word was the shilling. So just as the English came up with their own word for denarii, which was the penny, it was their own Saxon word, the shilling. And it goes back that long. It was actually Charlemagne who completely standardized this 240 pence to a pound right the way across Europe, the Holy Roman Empire. And so the shilling goes, the standardization of the shilling goes back there. There was also the florin, which I didn't mention. And a florin is 2 shillings. And of course, there are 20 shillings to a pound. So a florin was exactly 1/10 of a pound. So you can actually get to decimalization that way.
And how do we get to the crown as 2 shillings and 6pence? Or half crown? I mean, a crown was 5 shillings, right?
Well, yes, it was called the crown. Again, that was just the name of a coin. So when those were first minted, they had a crown on them, and in the design, and people started calling them crowns. And the groat was a coin. As I say, the mark wasn't. The guinea was for a short while. Well, I say short while. It was a couple of centuries.
Very cool. So we have another question, and I have one for you as well. So the next question is, actually we have 2 questions here. Okay, we'll address the treasure hunting question in a second here. So this is about the gold standard, and I guess when different central banks took their nations off the gold standard or other precious metal standard. So when did money become divorced from the value of the material used to make the coins? How about in Great Britain? When did that occur?
Well, of course, the ancient Chinese had paper money, so that was not based on the value. That was a piece of paper saying, according to the emperor, this is worth lots of money, so you better believe it. Unfortunately, for this lecture, I did not research that particular question. And
we'll save that for next year then.
Now then, I've got a feeling Churchill might have taken us out of the gold standard somewhere around the First World War-ish.
Yeah, here in the U.S., it was Richard Nixon's administration that did it.
Oh, right. So sorry, let you down there.
So let's talk about next year. It'll be a great topic actually around central banks and economies and essentially the gold standard.
The formation of the Bank of England is an amazing thing. One of the reasons the British got so wealthy when the Royal Navy was top dog in the 18th, 19th century was that the Bank of England invented things like the national debt and completely new processes like borrowing off our future selves. Which Jonathan Swift in Gulliver's Travels a lot of what he's saying in that is that this is madness. Although it turned out that we ended up getting very rich and it sort of worked. So
Indeed, to the point that everyone else has adopted it too. So,
Yes.
so one last bit of a topic. England had a lot of invaders from the Vikings or the Romans, you name it. And so there's actually still quite a bit of buried treasure in Great Britain, and it's still being found. And the kind of, I think there's some recent cases of fairly significant troves of coins.
No, they found the very last one just recently. That was definitely the last one. We've now found all of them.
And we have one of our folks on that, and it is a delightful comedy. It's called The Detectorists. I don't know, Nicholas, if you've seen that. Yeah. So it's about a group of folks who get together, and this is what they do as their hobby, and they go out and get permission to use their metal detectors and hunt for treasure on farmland. All right. Do we have any last questions for?
The bane of archaeologists, I should say as well.
Yeah.
There's detectorists that have no respect for stratigraphy. They go, "Oh, I've got something." They just dig straight down to it. Yeah, there were some layers of soil. I don't know. I didn't pay attention. Sorry.
Okay, then. Hey, Nicholas, I think this is the last time we're going to see you for this year, and so we all wish you a great holiday season.
Oh, thank you very much, and the same wish to you all.
Thank you, and we'll plan to reconnect next year then.
Grand.
Thanks, Nicholas. All
Bye.
right.